You put a marshmallow in front of a child and say to him, "If you don't eat it now, I'll give you another marshmallow a little later." The child looks, smells, touches, but he must not eat it. This seemingly simple test measures one of the most fundamental aspects of human psychology: self-control and delayed gratification. Conducted in the 1960s by psychologist Walter Mischel at Stanford University, the experiment was designed to see whether children could resist their immediate cravings. But interestingly, the test was not just a game. The results revealed a profound mental ability that years later influenced children's academic achievements, professional lives, and even their relationships. So can a child's resistance to a marshmallow really predict future success? Is self-control innate, or can it be developed? And most importantly, how can we adults apply this knowledge to our own lives? To find the answers to these questions, let's first examine how the marshmallow experiment was conducted, implementation, and process of the experiment. In this experiment conducted at Stanford University, children between the ages of 4 and 6 were taken one by one into a room. There was a table in front of them, a plate on the table, and a marshmallow in the plate. The experimenter made a simple offer to the child. "You can eat this marshmallow right now, but if you can wait, I will give you another one when I come back." The attendant then left the room and left the child alone. The waiting time was about 15 minutes. The children were looking at the marshmallow in front of them, sometimes touching and even smelling it. Some of them ate it instantly, while others gritted their teeth and waited. The most interesting moments of the experiment were the resistance strategies of the children. Some closed their eyes, some turned their heads and tried not to see the marshmallow. Others sang songs or played with their hands to distract themselves. The aim was to measure the children's ability to control themselves. Who can wait and who can't wait? And what consequences would this difference have in later years? At the end of the experiment, the children were divided into two groups: those who ate the marshmallow immediately and those who waited and doubled the reward. This is where the experiment became really interesting, because the researchers followed these children for years and the results revealed a strong link between future success and self-control. The striking aspect of the marshmallow experiment was that it was not only a test of willpower in the moment, but also a predictor of future success. Walter Mischel and his team followed the children in the experiment for years and observed the differences between them. The results were astonishing. The children who managed to wait achieved higher academic success in later years. Their SAT scores were higher, they did better in school, and had better social relationships. They also coped better with stress, made less impulsive decisions, and achieved their goals more easily. On the other hand, children who were impatient showed lower academic achievement. They were also observed to have more distractibility, difficulty managing stress, and a tendency to make impulsive decisions in adulthood. The marshmallow experiment showed that self-control is linked to future success. But this is where the real debate began. Is self-control innate, or can it be developed later? Walter Mischel and his team looked deeper into this question and came to the following conclusion. Self-control is not a fixed ability, but a skill that can be developed. Our brain, especially the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for willpower and impulse control. This area continues to develop throughout childhood and adolescence. So even if a child is impatient at a young age, they can develop this skill with the right methods. So what can be done to develop self-control? Mischel's research and modern psychology prove that self-control can be strengthened. There are some methods to achieve this. Distraction. Children may sing or close their eyes to avoid looking at the marshmallow during the experiment. Visualizing the future reward more vividly. People who visualize themselves being rewarded may be more patient. Changing environmental triggers. Avoiding factors that trigger impulses facilitates self-control. In summary, self-control is not an innate destiny, but a skill that can be developed with practice. At this point, another critical question arises. Why is self-control so difficult today? The factors that test self-control in today's world are much more than in the past. While in the past, distractions were limited, now we are surrounded by factors that provide instant gratification at any moment. Social media and push notifications. Our brains are constantly bombarded with dopamine rewards. A few seconds of video, endless scrolling, constant new content. These are one of the biggest sources of instant gratification. Easily accessible rewards, fast food, online shopping, one-click ordering. Rewards that used to require hours of effort are now available in just a few seconds. The attention economy. Big companies are designed to keep our attention on the screen for as long as possible. The more we lose self-control, the more they make. All this shows how the marshmallow experiment has become a bigger challenge today. In the past, children only had to resist one marshmallow, but today thousands of distracting stimuli are trying to take over our brains at the same time. So how can we regain self-control in the modern world? How to develop willpower in the modern world? If the marshmallow experiment were conducted today, it would probably be harder for children to resist. So how can we strengthen our self-control in today's world? Let's look at a few effective strategies based on Mitchell's findings and modern psychology. 1. Manage your environment. Take control without exhausting your willpower. One of the most effective ways to increase self-control is to remove triggers. The more our brain is exposed to a reward, the more addicted it becomes. If you always have your phone with you and notifications on, it is much harder to resist distractions. Make good habits easy and bad habits hard. Putting your phone in another room. Uninstalling social media applications or limiting their usage time. Choosing your workspace only for work. 2. Visualize the second marshmallow. One of the most powerful techniques Walter Mischel taught children was to imagine the future reward more vividly. That is to clarify in the mind what will be gained at the end of showing patience. If you are on a diet, visualize how it would feel to have a healthy body. When studying, think of the relief of a successfully passed exam. To avoid procrastinating, visualize the peace of mind you will experience when your work is completed. 3. Use distractions. One of the most effective techniques to strengthen self-control is to divert attention to something else. Mischel's experiment showed that children used methods such as singing, closing their eyes, or playing games to forget the marshmallow, taking a walk, or drinking water during a hunger attack. Start reading a book when you feel the urge to check the phone, starting with a small task instead of avoiding work. 4. Accumulate small victories. Strengthen the self-control muscle. Self-control is like a muscle. The more it is used, the stronger it becomes. It is better to start with small victories at the beginning instead of setting very big goals. Starting with 5 minutes of work time is easier than long hours of trying to concentrate. You can create big changes by overcoming small procrastinations. By making small choices in your daily life that require self-control, you can strengthen your willpower muscle. People often think that motivation is the most critical factor in achieving big goals. However, Walter Mischel's marshmallow experiment and subsequent studies show that motivation alone is not enough. Because motivation may be fleeting, but self-control or willpower is a critical factor for long-term success. Motivation is like an instant fire. You feel excited and eager to do something. However, this feeling can fade over time. When you face a particularly difficult task or get tired, the effect of motivation can quickly fade. On the other hand, self-control forces you to keep moving forward even in the face of difficulties. For example, someone who wants to start a diet feels highly motivated in the early days. However, after a few weeks, motivation starts to wane. This is where self-control comes into play. Choosing a healthy meal instead of fast food or not skipping a workout are choices made by someone with self-control. Someone who relies on motivation can easily give up by saying, "I don't feel like it today." Self-control is like a mental muscle and gets stronger when used regularly. The human brain can reduce the use of willpower by developing automatic habits. This is why successful people build strong systems instead of relying on motivation. Developing habits that support willpower to achieve success protects against fluctuations in motivation. Is our willpower unlimited, or does it have a certain capacity? The theory of ego depletion, put forward by Roy Baumeister and his team, suggests that willpower can tire just like a muscle. So someone who makes tough decisions throughout the day, tries to control themselves, or constantly appeals to their willpower, becomes more prone to losing self-control after a while. This may be one of the reasons why we are more likely to eat fast food at the end of the day, skip exercise, or stop working and spend time on social media. In one experiment, participants were told not to eat cookies placed in front of them. Participants who refrained from eating the cookies gave up much more quickly than the other group in the problem-solving tests that followed. This is because willpower, when used to restrain itself, can act as a resource that can be depleted in the short term. However, there is an important distinction here. If willpower is indeed depletable, how is it that successful people can exhibit consistently high self-control? Here, new research suggests that ego depletion may only be a matter of perspective. If a person believes that their willpower won't be depleted, they can actually last longer. So whether or not willpower is actually depleted may depend on one's beliefs about it. But is this theory valid? Current research offers a different perspective on the marshmallow experiment and the theory of ego depletion. How do new studies affect the results of these classic experiments? Is the marshmallow experiment valid? What does new research say? For years, Walter Mischel's marshmallow experiment has been recognized as one of the strongest indicators of self-control and success. However, today's psychology is reconsidering the results of this experiment. In 2018, a more comprehensive study was one of the most important studies questioning the results of the marshmallow experiment. Tyler Watts and his team from Cornell University repeated the experiment with a larger and more diverse sample. The results were quite striking. The children who were observed to be more successful in the long run in the first experiment were actually more advantageous in terms of socioeconomic factors. That is, self-control alone did not determine success. The fact that children from rich families could wait longer was not only due to willpower, but also to the environment of trust, level of education, and abundance of resources provided by their families. Children from poorer families, on the other hand, wanted the reward immediately because their lives were more uncertain about the future. This was not related to their lack of self-control, but to the necessities they faced in life. Another study analyzed the marshmallow experiment from the perspective of trust. Children were presented with a scenario that tested whether adults were trustworthy before they performed the experiment. Children were more reluctant to wait for the marshmallow if the adults did not fulfill something they had previously promised. So it wasn't just willpower, but environmental factors and trust in adults also affected patience. In summary, while the marshmallow experiment is still a powerful experiment that emphasizes the importance of self-control, the idea that it is the sole determinant of success is now questioned. Discipline and patience are important, but socioeconomic status, environmental factors, and confidence are just as influential. So if self-control is not an innate talent, is it possible to develop it? Is it possible to discipline our brain? Brain plasticity, capacity of our brains to change and adapt, suggests that self-control can be learned. Neuroscientists have discovered that the prefrontal cortex is directly linked to discipline and self-control. This region helps to control impulses and focus on long-term goals rather than immediate gratification. So how can we improve self-control? Research shows that training discipline in small doses makes our brains more resilient over time. A simple example: if you meditate every morning, even for 5 minutes, your ability to control your mind increases. Meditation strengthens the prefrontal cortex, which regulates emotional impulses and increases self-control. Another method is to set micro goals. Instead of setting big goals and failing, taking small but consistent steps activates the brain's reward mechanism. Instead of giving up something completely, it is much more effective to reduce it gradually. For example, instead of cutting out unhealthy snacks completely, progressing by reducing them a little more each week prevents the brain from resisting. Also, consciously organizing your environment is one of the most effective ways to achieve self-control. If you want to achieve a goal, instead of forcing yourself, adjust your environment accordingly. For example, putting your distracting phone in a drawer or keeping unhealthy foods out of sight will push you in the right direction without you even having to use your willpower. Finally, being kind to yourself is also a big factor. Discipline develops by enjoying small successes, not by punishing yourself. If you make a mistake, trying again instead of giving up gives your brain a more powerful learning experience. In summary, self-control works more like a muscle that can be trained than an innate ability. When the right techniques are used, every person can increase their self-discipline and achieve their long-term goals. What does it really take to succeed in life? Self-control, willpower, long-term goals. These are all important stones on the road to success. But are they enough on their own? When we analyze the people who are really successful in life, we see that they are the ones who manage their environmental factors and strategies correctly, not only with willpower. This is one of the most important lessons from Walter Mischel's marshmallow experiment. Self-control is not an innate ability, but a skill that can be developed. And this skill is strengthened not only by willpower, but also by building the right systems, knowing ourselves, and consciously shaping our environment. So what do successful people do differently? Instead of relying solely on their willpower, they build a system that supports them. If they want to eat healthy, they don't buy junk food. If they want to be more productive, they minimize distractions. Instead of constantly relying on willpower, they make strategic moves to use it when it is most needed. They also know very well who they are and how they work. They analyze at which points their willpower will weaken and how they will be motivated. Instead of forcing themselves, they achieve greater success by strengthening their habits. Another important factor is being passionate. According to psychologist Angela Duckworth's research, the most common characteristic of people who achieve great success in life is grit. That is, perseverance and passion. They focus not only on short-term self-control, but also on not giving up in the long run. Because willpower is only part of a long marathon. True success comes with the ability to keep going in difficult times. Finally, to succeed in life, we need to learn to forgive ourselves. We all sometimes lose our willpower, make mistakes, take wrong decisions, but the main thing is to learn from those mistakes and get back on our feet. Instead of constantly blaming ourselves, we should try to understand what makes us stronger. In summary, success is not just about willpower. Establishing the right systems, strengthening habits, persevering, and being kind to ourselves are all important parts of long-term success. If you questioned yourself while watching this video, you can write your thoughts in the comments. What is your biggest challenge in this regard? Is willpower or strategy more important for success? Also, don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. See you in new content.